It's that super no, she my flow. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's that
6 super rare album covers designed by Basquiat, Warhol, Richter, and more. You're probably familiar with the cover of the Velvet Underground and Nico's self-titled debut album. Perhaps that big banana designed, of course, by Andy Warhol was the first record you ever bought, but did you know that, 15 years prior, in 1952, a young Warhol's illustrations covered The Nation's Nightmare, a CBS radio broadcast about narcotics and crime? Or that, in 1992, Cindy Sherman created an album cover for Babes in Toyland? Apparently, the photographer stopped by a few of the incendiary punk band's raucous CBGB shows. Or that long before Collier Shore photographed Lady Gaga's Joanne portrait, she worked with British trip-hop outfit Sneaker Pimps in the late 1990s. These record cover collaborations all feature in art and vinyl. The unprecedented exhibition now on view at San Francisco's Frankel Gallery is the first to focus on works of art commissioned and created specifically for albums, not records featuring appropriated pieces. The selection spent 7 decades, beginning with a Pablo Picasso illustration from 1949, and concluding with a Sophie Calle-designed record released last year. Along the way, works by Jean Cocteau, Yves Klein, Joseph Albers, Yoko Ono, Lee Friedlander, Robert Mapplethorpe, Laurie Anderson, Keith Haring, Kiki Smith, David Wojnarowicz, Francesco Clemente, Jean-Michel Basquiat, Cy Twombly, David Shrigley, Ed Templeton, Yayoi Kusama, and Wolfgang Tillmans, among hundreds more. Seriously. All of Art and Vinyl's impossibly rare LPs are first editions. They belong to the show's curator, Antoine de Beaupré, author of the photography-focused compendium Total Records and founder of Library 213, a Paris bookshop specializing in out-of-print titles. Before studying jazz composition at Boston's Berklee College of Music in the late 1990s, de Beaupré had already begun building his LP library. The early hip-hop titles he picked up in his teens have since become valuable resources for producers, unable to locate the long-lost wax. Through my business, I'm very familiar with some photography, de Beaupré tells me. When I flipped through records, I realized that many photographers and artists had created artwork for covers. So I decided to build a collection with this framework in mind. It's a project that I've been working on for more than 10 years, he explains of Art and Vinyl. De Beaupré stresses that his collection is by no means a complete index of every record cover ever created by fine artists. Raymond Pettibon's output alone is staggering. Rather, he focuses on covers that best reflect the artist's practices in the specific periods the records were made. I ask why, for example, his selection doesn't include any covers by William Eggleston, the American photographer whose use of saturated color is considered pioneering. First, the majority of Eggleston's photographs were appropriated for albums rather than created specifically for these records. Second, the one Eggleston commissioned de Beaupré knows of, a black and white picture taken in the early 80s, to me, is not really representative of the Eggleston work. In this sense, Art and Vinyl presents a rich, nuanced history of art from the mid-20th century to today, tracing the currents of conceptual strategies from abstract expressionism to Nguyen sculpture. It's also teeming with music waiting to be discovered. Before diving into the catalog, I wasn't familiar with Consolidated, an early 90s industrial outfit with an activist ethos, whose 1994 album Business of Punishment was designed by Barbara Kruger. What fascinates me is that the LP is really a popular medium that is accessible to everybody, says de Beaupré. I hope Art and Vinyl will bring new music freaks into the world of art, and that art people will start to look at something that is a very common object as something you can put on your wall. Below, de Beaupré shares the stories behind 7 covers. Andy Warhol, 1952. Title: The Nation's Nightmare, Traffic in Narcotics, Crime on the Waterfront. Label: Columbia Special Products. Country: USA. Format: 33 revolutions per minute. Edition: unknown. ID: we associate Warhol with records like the Rolling Stones' Sticky Fingers, which you've included in Art and Vinyl. These drawings are so different. Antoine de Beaupré, exactly. Warhol did, I think, over 50 or 60 record covers. All of the Warhol records I picked out I have in the collection simply because I believe they're really representative of Warhol's work at their specific periods in time. This is among the very early records by Warhol. The image he drew is so strong, and it's an image that you wouldn't be able to reproduce on a cover nowadays. So to place this in its time, it's incredible and fascinating, the subject of the record and the freedom going on. Robert Frank, 1972. Performer, The Rolling Stones. Title: Exile on Main Street. Label: Rolling Stones Records. Country: USA. Format: 33 revolutions per minute. Edition: unknown. I read that the Rolling Stones had originally commissioned Man Ray to do this cover. Yes. Actually, I had the original Man Ray test record cover in the very first show of Total Records. What Man Ray came up with, the Rolling Stones didn't like it at all. So they asked Robert Frank, because they were friends with him back then. They switched from Man Ray to Robert Frank, which is not bad. Laughs. Raymond Pettibon, 1982. Performer, Black Flag. Title: Jealous Again. Label: SST Records. Country: USA. Format: 45 revolutions per minute /12 '. Edition: unknown. Why choose Jealous Again among all of Pettibon's Black Flag titles? My purpose in the show in the book was not to come up with a complete list or all of the records made by all those artists. I mostly picked up early material, or records that are representative of the artist, the ones that really give a good idea of his work. Similar to Warhol and several others, the collection of Raymond Pettibon records is very, very big. This is among his earliest, and I just love the cover. I have another record that was done much later, Sonic Youth School, and it's completely different in style.